Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to make one of my favorite things to make and one of my family's favorite things to eat. Banana bread. But not just any banana bread. I don't typically like nuts in my desserts except for maybe carrot cake, hummingbird cake. So for banana bread, the recipe calls for nuts, but I like to exclude those and replace it with chocolate chips. If you like nuts in your banana bread, I still urge you to try this recipe. I've converted some folks that like nuts in their bread to prefer the chocolate chip banana bread. Give it a try. I'd love to know what you think. Leave a comment and let's get to baking. I'm already learning from my mistakes. So my first video, I totally forgot the most important part. Preheat your oven. For the banana bread, we're going to preheat it to 325 degrees. Next, you want to prep your pan properly. So I use this loaf pan. I'll spray, non-stick spray, and then I'll line it with parchment paper. And then you'll see I'll actually leave a little bit of extra parchment paper on each side, just so once you take it out of the oven, there's a little bit of room to pull the bread out of the pan. I usually don't like the bread cooling in a hot pan. I'll take it right out and put it on a cooling rack. I never throw away overripe bananas. I always, if I'm not gonna make a banana bread right away, I'll usually put 4 into a quart-size Ziploc and then freeze it until I use them. And they can hold like this pretty well for a long time. Then when I'm getting ready to do a banana bread, I'll take it out of the freezer, put it into a bowl of warm water to soften them up, get them to room temperature, and then they're good to go. Whoops. Next, you're going to cream together the sugar and the butter. Unfortunately, the butter needs to be at room temperature, like most recipes called for, and I totally forgot. So if I still have a stick that I need at room temperature, I usually just stick it in the microwave for about 15 seconds upright like this, and then I'll turn it over and do another 10 seconds or so, and that should get it close enough. We're going to do 1 cup granulated sugar, and then we're going to do 1 stick of unsalted butter at room temperature. And this is the one I put in the microwave for about 20 seconds. It's a little too soft, but that shouldn't be a problem. We're gonna beat the butter and the sugar together until nice and fluffy, and then we'll add in the next ingredient. Scrape down the edges, and then do it a little bit longer. Next, we're going to add 2 eggs, 1 at a time, beat well after each egg. These do not need to be at room temperature. Scrape down the bowl and then mix one more time. At this point, your bananas, if they were frozen, should hopefully be defrosted. They are gonna look a little nasty. They're very slimy and watery, but just dump this whole bag in. Don't try to drain out any of the liquid. I promise you, it tastes just as good as if you used fresh, ripe bananas. Then go ahead and mix all of that together. Next, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of whole milk. It does not have to be room temperature. And 1 teaspoon ground cinnamon. And then we're going to mix all that together again. Just going to scrape down the sides again before we add in the dry ingredients and do 1 more quick mix. In a separate bowl, we're going to add in the dry ingredients. So we got 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon baking powder, 1 teaspoon baking soda, 1 teaspoon salt, and then I like to just whisk this together real quick before we mix it in. At this point, I like to mix the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients, and I mix this by hand, not on the mixer, just to avoid over mixing. I'll pour a little bit of dry in, fold it all together, a little bit more, and then I'll stop as soon as I don't see any more dry flour spots. So add a little bit of your dry, fold that in. I usually do about a third at a time. And then the last bit of dry. That looks good. Now we're gonna add the best part, the chocolate chips. For the chocolate chips, I don't use any particular brand. I just use the store brand here. The only thing I would suggest is that they're semi-sweet, and I like to use the mini morsels. I've done that both with the larger, normal size chocolate chips and the minis, and the mini seems to come out better. I've never actually measured out the chocolate chips. I always eyeball it. So I've put my bowl onto a scale so I can gauge about how much I put in to share. These are 12-ounce bags. I usually do a half a bag, so I'm thinking around 6 ounces. Oh, shoot. I was using an old bag, and these are not the minis, so I'm gonna take these out. All right, let's try that again. I was able to get most of the larger chips out. Didn't want to lose too much batter, so it'll be fine to have a little bit of a mix. Now I've double checked my bag. These are the mini morsels. We're just gonna go ahead and pour that in. All right, I've added about half a bag. The scale is showing 6 ounces. Next, we're going to move the scale. Again, just hand mix this in. It almost looks like cookie dough, but it smells like banana bread. Now we're gonna add this into our prepped pan. Just try to level it off as best you can. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now we're gonna take the pan, put it in the oven. It's a thicker batter. The oven's at 325, which is on the lower side, so it's gonna take about an hour, plus or minus, about 15 minutes, depending on your oven. It's been an hour and 5 minutes. It's looking like it's pretty close to being done. So I'm gonna check it. I like to check with a knife instead of a toothpick, just because on the banana bread, if you use a toothpick, sometimes it'll come out looking pretty dry or clean when it's still a little raw inside. So I like to use a knife. So we'll check that real quick, but I'm thinking it needs about 5 more minutes. Knife came out pretty wet. Probably needs closer to 10 minutes, but we'll check again in 5. The last thing you want to do for banana bread is overcook it. Okay, it's been 5 more minutes. Gonna check again. All right, we're really close now. I would say 5 more minutes, we should be good. It's been 5 more minutes, so we're at about an hour, 15 minutes total at this point. Gonna check again. So that came out pretty clean, basically done. At this point, I'm gonna pull it out because it'll still continue to bake a little bit while it's cooling. It'll be nice and moist. All right, just took it out, put it directly on to the counter, and I'm gonna put it straight onto a cooling rack instead of letting it cool in the pan, just to minimize it cooking any further on the outside. I'm gonna leave it on the counter until it gets to room temperature, and then I like to stick it in the fridge and have it chilled. My wife would cut into it right now and have it while it's warm. Banana bread, cooled to room temperature. I put it in the refrigerator for a while. Now it's out. Let's cut it open and see what it looks like. All right, I usually cut the butts off. I don't like the butts of banana bread. Usually save that for later. My wife will eat those. Then I do usually maybe a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch slices. These are about 1/2 inch. You can see that, all those chocolate chips. going to be delicious. Thanks again for watching. I think on the next video I'm going to make my second favorite thing to make, which is flan. Another pretty easy recipe that is delicious and people love.